If you've ever wondered how a Frenchman arrives in Perth, Western Australia with English as his second language, he's got $50 in his pocket, he starts a business, 15 years later, he's got it humming, it's known for its customer service, and he only spends 3 hours a week on it, you better listen to this podcast. I'm going to introduce you to Thibaut Holl. Welcome to the show, Thibaut, and thanks for coming along. How is it that a Frenchman arrives in Australia, has but a few pennies in his pocket, decides, I need to make some money, goes into business, builds Perth Landscaping Group into a really successful, customer-orientated company, and here we are, sharing stories. Tell us a bit more about the journey. How did that come to be?
Well, it feels a bit like fluck, really, or fluke. Fluke is the word. Came in Australia back in 2012 or 2011. Travelled around, started in Melbourne, travelled all the way around, got to Perth, absolutely broke. And one of my friend was just a French guy from primary school that I ended up staying with, and he was just doing some windows cleaning, cash in hand, all out of Gumtree. And my mate and I got to Perth, got to his, and we saw him coming home with wads of cash every night, and we'd be struggling trying to get a job. Obviously not knowing the country and the ways things work, we struggled. And but my mate Mark comes every night, and he's got those wads of cash, and he's shouting beers to everyone, and we live in that share house. It was a mess. But I'm thinking, well, surely I can do something like that. And so I started to advertise myself on Gumtree for all sorts of anything I could think of. And a trend came up in gardening. And so I just bailed from there, and I got hooked, really. It was a new thing for me, like business and the industry. And I just got hooked in learning business, gardening, and then it just unraveled from there, and I just couldn't stop.
So did you actually know anything about gardening?
Remotely. I was helping mum when I was a kid plant veggies, and that's about it.
So a guy who comes to Australia, English is his second language, knew what we all know about gardening because we pretty much all help mum, started a gardening business.
Yep. And it evolved. One day someone asked me to build a retaining wall, and they asked me, it was a little gardening job that I picked up, and they asked me if I could build a retaining wall. I said, of course I can build you a retaining wall. At the time, I was saying yes to everything that came my way that had a potential to bring me money. And spending the evening on YouTube, learn how to build retaining wall, try to figure out how to quote for it, lost a ton of money, spend 10 times as long building that retaining wall as it should. But I was doing it mostly straight. And Mostly. I still remember it was a little bit wavy, but I didn't know any better. The client was wrapped. It costed them almost nothing. And it was the next thing on top of gardening that opened up to me. And I thought, well, I looked around and I looked at the quality of the work that was presented around, and I thought, well, surely with a little bit of training or a little bit of effort, I can do just as good or better. And yeah, I've pushed from there.
Did you ever think that you'd be in business?
No, never. I come from a family that hates capitalists, and my old man talks about anything banks, capitalists, he's got a lot of passion against it. And so growing up, it was all hippie vibes and more in the communist side of things, so to speak. So yeah, no, never thought I'd end up in business, but the dynamic, the broad element that we touch on in business was just so exciting. Like the human factor, the strategies, everything. I just couldn't get enough of it.
Wow. So you're hooked.
I am hooked. Yeah. It's been 15 years.
Yeah, that's a hell of a journey.
hmm
Now, you were telling me before, if somebody said to you, hey, Thibaut, start a business and it's going to take you 15 years, you probably wouldn't have done it.
No, definitely not. At the time when I was in Perth, very first up, I thought, well, I give myself 6 months. I'm going to make a ton lot of cash, and then I'll take off to South America and continue traveling. And that was the extent of my planning at the time. And then it became, in 2 years, we wrap this up and we're off. And it's been 2 years for about, 13 years.
Tell me, where is Perth Landscaping Group now? What sort of size are you? What does it look like?
We've made a few changes over the last few years. So for a long time, it was me and my wife, Cindy, running everything, and a bunch of technicians doing the work. And about 2.5 years ago, we decided that we had enough of them 12-hour days, 7 days a week. And so we went on a bit of a journey to put that business under management. And at the time, it was either that or close shop and just go try our luck somewhere else and get a bit of balance. And so we did, but throughout the journey, we changed a few things, and we ended up focusing into the, I guess, Perth retic, which is our biggest profit margin, and the best part of our business model was in the retic or irrigation department.
Yeah.
And so we closed down our landscaping business. We sold our gardening business, garden maintenance, and we decided to run fully on the retic. And so we are about 20 staff, and growing.
So I'm going to go forwards and backwards a bit,
Yeah.
if you don't mind. So I have been with you for a while, and I know that you guys are very successful. Was it the hours that you were working, and I'm guessing the compromise of lifestyle, because you guys did work 7 days a week, I remember that, that led you to say, something's got to change, and either we put this thing under management and back off a bit, or we sell it or shut it down? Was that something like that?
That was pretty much it. Yeah, we I guess we reached a bit of a ceiling as per. We kind of reflected. I think we flew back to France to see my family, and it was my sister's wedding, and we spent a bit of time with my folks, my brother, sister, on holiday in the Alps. And I was sitting down with Cindy, and we were chatting, and I was like, well, that is life. Like hanging with folks and having a community and being close to family. And what we have in Perth ain't that. Like we just at work, and in our relationship, we were glorified flatmates. Not much more, because we were exhausted all the time to really enjoy each other, and that was very much the reason why we decided to go under management and make a big shift, because there's no way we'd continue on that path for much longer. Starting to grow some gray hair. I thought, well, that's enough. It has to change. But
it sounds really simple. Yes, let's just put the business under management. But
yeah,
it wasn't.
done.
Yeah, well,
3 years.
Yeah,
What's that?
Tell me about the trials and tribulations of putting that business under management, because I know it wasn't just like that.
Oh, definitely was not.
What did you try? What was your first? What were your first thoughts, and what did you try first?
Well, it's been quite dynamic those last 3 years, but so we had a model that worked really well with me and Cindy handling everything. So there was the 3 different separate businesses, and all running separately from a marketing perspective, ABN, all of that. And we thought, well, I thought naively that it was making things more simple. And so we decided to keep everything siloed and hire coordinators and manager per entities. that didn't quite work, partially because we didn't know how to manage managers, because we never had managers, and we didn't realize that we were actually managing everything. And I think also we made the whole thing way too complicated, which worked for us because we build all that complexity and those softwares and the link between the softwares and everything. We build it with Cindy, so we understood the whole thing in and out. And then trying to get people in that wouldn't grasp that, or perhaps we wouldn't be able to. We didn't spend enough time to explain that complexity, and it just turned to a bit of a mess, and we were all super busy, and things were not working. So we had to find a way to simplify and reduce that complexity, and hence the decision to eventually ditch most of the businesses and just keep and focus on the one and do the one thing and trying to do it right, rather than spreading ourselves too thin, trying to do too many things at once.
Can I unpack what you're calling the complexity for a moment, just so I can get a clearer understanding of what does, in your mind, that complexity looks like? Is it about having a multiple of siloed entities, or is it about the building of systems and processes to run and manage everything that other people can get their heads around?
I'm still unsure, actually. You're asking me the question, and I'm trying to answer, but I'm not actually sure as per how we stuffed up fully there.
What does your gut tell you? If you were back in that situation today with the experience that you've got, what would you do differently?
So I remember early on, I was explaining to someone that was much more advanced in business than I was, and I was explaining the 3 businesses that we were growing in parallel and how I decided to make it siloed and everything. And I was so excited about it. I was so proud of myself for having 3 businesses, not one. And I'm talking to that chap, and I can't remember who it was, but I remember having a yarn at some networking event, and he asks me, "So what is the actual profitable part of the business? Which one is the best profit, and which one's the worthwhile one?" And I went around explaining, well, it doesn't matter like if the gardening ain't profitable because it brings leads to this one and this and that and the other. And looking back, I was like, yep, that's right. I should have started with one, do really good, and then tag on other ones once we've got one working really good, if needed at the time. And I think, yeah, keep things simple. It's probably a motto I should have run by from the start. But
Do you think it was naivety and or ego or something else that led you down the path to say, yeah, but you know what, 3 businesses is better than one? What is that about?
I think I was working with a different. I had this model in my head, this business model where I was thinking, well, any service-based business operates very similarly. So it's same operating systems, like the job management softwares are or can be very similar between different businesses of service-based. The marketing targets a similar demographic, etc. So having a central database that you can remarket your customer, different service-based business, made a lot of sense. And in my head, we'd be running a suite of businesses to complement each other, and that was the reason why we had the 3 entities. We developed from the one business, which we were doing a bit of gardening, a bit of landscaping, a bit of irrigation, all on the one, to split to have, I guess, professional within each entity rather than having jack of all. And that's how I developed that idea that, well, if each of the business generate their own leads, generate their own database, and we can then cross promote horizontally between the businesses. Then it's just a matter of tagging on more service-based business, and before we know it, we own this place.
So actually, it doesn't sound to me as if it was ego-driven. There was an idea and a theory, if you like, which even intellectually, I'm listening to you, and my brain's thinking, well, that kind of makes sense.
Yep.
So there was a theory. So it wasn't, well, unless you tell me differently, it doesn't sound like it was an ego move. I want to be the biggest and the best. It was, if I do these things, potentially this should happen.
Yep.
Do you think that's more
probably
potentially the case?
Probably. And I think the way I went about it was probably as backward. I should probably have made the model on one business perfect and then tag on the other one. But it's one of them mistakes.
Live and
learn. It's my MBA that I'm paying for.
So tell me more about the next stages of getting this thing under management, because it is now.
It is under management. So we had a few mishaps in hiring. So as you do, we didn't really know exactly what the criteria around management had to be. So we hired. We made some mistakes in hiring. So we chopped and changed a little bit there. But eventually we got to a stage where we were more hindrance than anything else, Sydney and I, trying to help micromanage.
Yep.
And we decided to remove ourselves from the day-to-day, and we went traveling around Australia while being accessible to the team for answers and what's not. And we've decided to let them figure out how to run things with our systems and our way of doing it, with a little bit of guidance. And I think that was a really good move, because it both gave us the bit of a breather. So we remove ourselves from that day to day, and we were able to look at the bigger picture, and gave all our managers and coordinator the room to make the decisions and not be worried about having to ask permission all the time, or having us hovering around and I guess fixing or making sure nothing broke. So us being away meant that they were able to, I guess, make the business theirs in a way. And that worked really good.
How emotionally easy or difficult was that for you and Cindy to do?
It has been quite difficult, eh? And the first couple of weeks when we were on the road was fantastic. We were down south in the forest camping and just breathing for a change. But and I think so that's close to a year and a half now, and I'm still trying to unwrap myself from the business and me as one identity, and I'm finding that still to this day, like I still find myself very much wrapped. My identity, myself, is very much wrapped with Perth Landscaping Group, and so having other people run the show feels somewhat odd, but I think that's the only way. I try to remind myself that it's not so much. It's a company, so it's not an individual. The meaning of a company is it's a group of people running a ship together, not a dictatorship.
Yeah,
I guess. So yeah.
But you're still at the head of it, and you're still involved.
Yep. Not too much.
How much?
Last 3 months, I've probably spent about 3 hours per week.
Wow, that's pretty good.
If that. Yeah. I've been busy building a veggie patch, so I've got bigger priorities.
15 years later, now you're learning how to garden.
Yep, that's right. That's right. Yep, I'm growing my veggies now.
Good job.
Well, I'm a slow learner. What can I say?
Thibaut, I want to turn us to a conversation you and I don't know if we finished it, but we definitely started it last week. And we were reflecting on our journeys and the value of advice. And the theme was around, when you start in a business with nothing, you've got nothing. So every dollar counts.
Mm.
And I remember in my first business, I had $20 and I got 2 jobs. I was super excited.
Yeah.
Hey, got 2 jobs. And my thought process was, I wasn't worried about the work because I knew how to do it. If I do this job today, then I have enough money to put fuel in the van for the job that I can do tomorrow. So it's really grassroots level. Every cent counts, actually. So the mindset in the early days was better be mindful of what I'm spending because that dictates everything. So you become incredibly frugal. And then as I went on that journey, and you don't know what you don't know, but I certainly had a belief, yeah, I can do this.
Yeah.
So you and I were talking about this, and we were saying, well, at some point, somebody starts giving you some advice, and I'd love your take on this because I'm thinking you don't know what you don't know, and you have a huge belief in yourself. Yeah, I can do this. I know what I'm doing, or you think you know what you're doing. But you've come along the journey and you don't want to pay for the advice.
Mm.
And then as you go on your journey, the business becomes more successful. There's more net profit. In reality, when you look back, you can pay for the advice. But you've become a tight ass and you don't know it. And that behavior that you needed in the beginning, it helped you survive, has survived throughout your journey. And even when you're successful now, you don't want to pay for the advice. You may want it. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I relate to that story. I think we were sharing last week. I had $50 left in my wallet or in my pocket or wherever when I started my business venture and went to buy a whippersnipper or whatever tool I could afford with $50 and did my job. Went back, bought another tool, and grew from there. So very much like yourself, and a very strong belief that I can do it all myself and I can figure it all out. And to a great extent, when you start a business from scratch, you've got to try and figure out as much as you can from yourself. But still to this day, or for a very long time, I've had those accountants, and I wouldn't call them to ask questions because I knew that every 6 minutes would cost me $50 or whatever the rate was. And I'd received those bills after calling the first few times to ask a few directions. And pretty soon I was like, no way, I'm just going to spend, half a day researching that tax bill or that answer by myself. Whereas I should have called, get my advice, move on and do something more productive. And to this day, I'm still struggling to open up and ask them advice and try and get it all figure out myself. I'm not sure if that comes from those early days where every dollar count, or perhaps there is a little bit of, "Well, surely I can figure it out, and I've got to prove myself or prove the world that I'm able to figure it out."
Mm.
And I'm starting to think now that there's plenty other things I can figure out, or if I want to make a greater impact, whether in business or in my life, I've got to give out responsibilities or parts of that business growth to other people and just give the reins out and let it happen rather than being in control. Or I think it probably stemmed from a little bit of a control freak, being afraid that things will break or.
Did you at any point ever have trouble asking for help? Or see asking for help as a weakness?
Oh, I'd say so. a strong man is one that figures it out and provides and make things happen. I reckon it's. I remember as a kid, I must have been 6 or 7 or something, and I go to my we'd go to my grandparents, and in France, to say goodbye or goodbye, like you kiss on the cheek.
Yeah.
That's the tradition. And so I go to kiss my grandfather on the cheek, and he stops me and says, "Men shake hands." And he was a strong man. Like he went through the wars and everything, and I looked up to him. That kind of set me up for that. All right, man needs to be strong. And somehow in my little 7 years old brain, I sort of associated strength with just doing yourself and getting things done.
I think that's a common thread. Oh, it is another subject all on its own, I think. And I'd love to have that conversation. Maybe that's for another time, because I think certainly I suffered from that. And I say suffering. I didn't feel like I was suffering at the time. But if I look back now, I would say it definitely hindered me.
In your business growth and
my
progress?
personal growth, because I didn't know, it was subconscious. But on reflection today, I would say I didn't ask for help. And part of it, I can relate to your story. I didn't know how to ask for help either. So, which was an interesting thing for me to discover on my journey, to say, well, how do I actually do that? I didn't even know.
Do you think partially it's a bit of a trust issue as well? For me, I also had a little bit of doubt in whoever came and helped or tried to help. And if I didn't do it myself, I'd have a little bit of a doubt in the back of my head. It's like, is that done as good as it could have been done? And I still have to catch myself at time and remind myself, well, if it's done by someone else, it means that you can do something else. Even if it's not done perfect, we're better off. But I've got, like, if I do it all, it'll all be perfect.
Or perfect the way we see it, right?
But or at least that's the fallacy of thinking it should be perfect. In reality, I just butch everything up because I'm so busy trying to do it all, and nothing is even remotely perfect.
I can totally relate to that, and it took me 40 years to learn that lesson.
Yep.
I'm not sure I'm finished learning yet.
Well, in our conversation last week, I can't remember exactly the context, but I was talking about potential venture in New Zealand that I might want to pursue, and you said something along the line of, wow, in my journey, I have access to all them other things where I could be a director there, or help in that venture here, or take on that business, but I want to focus into the one and do it really well. I was like, thanks, Hanif, for that. For that lesson.
The subtle message.
The subtle, not so subtle. Thibaut, get your shit straight. Do one thing, do it good.
I think there's more joy in that, is one of the things I've learned. Spreading yourself too thin. Certainly, I think for personalities like ours, it creates discontent, because you want to do things well, but there's only so much bandwidth. So at some point, you've got to cull something to say, well, I can't give my limited time to everything. Otherwise, it's just not going to be good. I just want to go back to the value thing for a second and test a theory with you. I've this theory around value, because there's one part of it to say, if I can access valuable advice, I'll make more money. I won't suffer the trial and error. And in theory, I should be more successful because of it. And it'll cut down the period of time that I go on that part of my journey. One element we touched on is being happy to pay for it. And I think happy to pay for it is an interesting thing, not just, yeah, I'll pay you, but I begrudge you for it. And then the interesting thing I think about is, how do you know that the advisor is any good? Are they actually giving good advice? And I have a theory about this that I want to run past you. When you start, you don't know what you don't know.
Mm.
And you can only afford so much, but you have a limited pile of knowledge. So if you're listening to an advisor and you're optimistic, you could be led to say, oh, that sounds like a great idea. I'll go and do it. It might be bad advice. And perhaps you don't know enough to ask the questions you need to ask to ground whether that advisor has only an intellectual understanding of what he's saying. So he's never done it before. It's just textbook. Or whether that advisor has actually done it. As you go through your journey and you've done a lot of doing, I think you become more discerning because you can listen to somebody giving advice. And in your head, you're testing their theory in the trenches, in the grounds, and in the weeds to say, actually, that would work. So you can get a feel for it. And I was wondering whether in the early stages, let's say I was at the beginning of my journey, and for some reason, I didn't have this attachment to not paying. So I was happy to pay for advice. And I was wondering whether, in the absence of me knowing whether the advice was good or not, whether I could lean on my network to go to someone else who's a bit more advanced than me and say, look, I'm trying to solve some problems. This guy's telling me this. What do you think?
Mm.
Do you think that would be effective? And what do you think about my theory of how you weigh up what is good advice and how do you do it? That's 50 questions in one. I understand. Sorry.
Yeah. I remember rather early on, I decided that marketing was something a bit dirty that I didn't really want to get involved with. I knew we had to do it, but I didn't want to do it myself. So I went and found marketing company to get their advice and pay them to do the work. And I found myself in a contract where it costed me a ton of money from someone that didn't want to spend the money on advice or service at the time. And the work wasn't good. And so from that time, I came up with a little bit of a theory that if I want to pass out or subcontract part of the work, I've got to understand at least 80% of that topic. So I'd know whether someone is pulling the leg or not. And I'd be able to grade the quality of the work or the advice. The way you approach getting to that 80% is probably could be from tapping into the network and asking people that have been there or that understand the topic and having a bit of a sounding board, or good old research and training. What's your take on that?
I reckon we're incredibly lucky. When I started out, there was no internet. Now, I can ask ChatGPT and it will access the internet and give me a whole wealth of thoughts and ideas. It's not always factual, but it gives me a basis to start researching things.
Yeah.
You've got access, whether you've got a network or not. You've actually got access to incredible amounts of information. And I think you're right, actually. That take is right. I could YouTube something on marketing in this sector, and it actually gives me a basis of some knowledge. I can sit with the marketer and just listen to them, see what they come up with, and then start questioning them to see where it lands. And maybe I'll get a gut feel on whether, this person actually knows what they're doing or not. You opened up an interesting conversation earlier on in the piece when you said that your dad was anti-capitalism. And you've gone into business and you've gone back home. How did your family see the businessman Thibaut? And how did that, was there a vibe?
No. When we have yarns with the old man, is I say, I've got to invest money for my retirement and all them, I guess, capitalistic things that we have to do, especially in Australia, where you found your own retirement through super and various investments, but it doesn't apply to me. So there's a funny thing about my old man is, investments is bad, is the root of all evil and this and that. But if you do it, it's okay because you have no choice, Thibaut. So it's always quite interesting. It's a bit of a twofold conversation with Dad, but they're rather proud of where I'm at, I think, and I think I don't fall into the capitalistic evil model that he sees out in this world.
So he hasn't pushed you aside and abandoned you.
No. We still have really good relationship, and yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. What advice would you give to people who are starting out in business now that you've been doing this for 15 years?
Get your advice straight. I think my biggest hurdle was that I was trying to reinvent the wheel or just figure it all out by myself and keeping everything a bit too close. And I think there's, like we've discussed and experienced, there's a great lot of benefit of opening up and bringing on quality advisors and go on the journey as a company, not an individual.
I love that, Thibaut. Thanks for coming on.
You're welcome.
Been great talking to you.